Rogue is a beguiling mutant character. Created by Chris Claremont and Michael Golden, Rogue first appeared in Avengers Annual Issue 10 in 1981. Her mutation allows her to absorb the abilities, memories, personality, and physical characteristics of others via touch, specifically skin to skin. Now these days she has full control over her mutant ability, but in the past it's been a big point of contention for the character. Her skin produces involuntary high voltage jolts that can be fatal to others. With powers that complex, she's picked up some pretty neat tricks over the years. So today we're counting down the top 10 superpowers you didn't know Rogue has. Or had, rather. She recently got a bit of a clean slate. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Starting us off in at number 10, Miss Marvel powers. Once upon a time, Rogue permanently absorbed Carol Danvers' psyche and superhuman abilities when Danvers was Miss Marvel. As you can imagine, this screwed around quite a bit with Carol. Essentially, the two minds shared one body, but it gave Rogue a whole new set of abilities, including flight at wickedly fast speeds, the ability to repel bullets, superhuman strength, stamina, durability, reflexes, speed, and a precognitive sense. Damn. Not only did she gain her powers, but she also gained Carol's human Kree physiology, which made her incredibly resistant to most poisons and toxins. Eventually though, Charles Xavier was able to separate the two, but it has left a little bit of tension between Carol and Rogue over the years. Speaking of tension, up next at number 9, shapeshifting. Rogue has absorbed the powers of her adoptive mother Mystique a handful of times. But not for the reasons that you'd expect. While she did gain Mother Dearest's powers, Rogue touching Mystique was for other reasons. She wanted to better understand her mother. Adoptive mother, rather. As you know, Rogue doesn't just absorb abilities, but thoughts, memories, etc. In one case though, outside of the comics, we did get to see Rogue use Mystique's powers. Sort of. In the X-Men the animated series, after Rogue had absorbed Carol Danvers and the latter's psyche was becoming the more prominent of the two, she ended up using Mystique's powers to shapeshift into her previous body. You got a complicated past with your mother, so I'm just gonna use your mother's powers to make you look like me. Moving on to number 8, death. Prior to Rogue being able to control her powers, a lingering touch of hers could be deadly. Typically for those who had superpowers or were powerful mutants, her touch would cause damage and might even put them into a coma. But in the case of someone with a physiology like Carol Danvers, psyches were merged. But what about for a regular human? It's no bueno. Rogue's touch is practically the touch of death. For regular non-powered humans, Rogue's touch could very well be fatal, sucking their strength at an accelerated and alarming rate that our human bodies cannot handle. Moving on to less depressing territory, and at number 7, she can manipulate ice. Wonder whose powers she absorbed to get this little trick. If it wasn't already obvious, this skill set of Rogue's was the byproduct of touching X-Men teammate Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. It's a power that she's borrowed from Bobby on multiple occasions, not only for use in combat but for other means too. Bobby's ice manipulation powers, which might I add are Omega level mutant abilities, allow him to decrease the thermal energy around him in order to create ice structures. His creations will not break unless he wills them to. So you can imagine how this was useful for Rogue in Avengers vs. X-Men, when a whole lot of rebuilding was required after a failed attempt to use the Phoenix Force occurred. Moving on to another X-Men member here, in at 6, phasing. Okay, personally Kitty Pryde's phasing powers were always the mutant ability that I wanted growing up, so I am a big fan of this number. In Uncanny X-Men issue 194, the X-Men are almost bested by villain Nimrod when Kitty Pryde has an idea, and it's a good one too. Out for the count and being carried around by Rogue, Kitty decides to push her head up against Rogue's, forcing the mutant to absorb her powers, psyche, thoughts, and memories of her teammate. This spawns a greater plan in which Rogue then absorbs Wolverine, Colossus, and Nightcrawler's powers, using them to attack the sinister robot, smashing it to bits. Although Nimrod ends up rebuilding itself and teleporting away, it's still a pretty big win for the X-Men. Up next, number 5, weather manipulation. Storm is the second Omega level mutant on our list whose powers Rogue has absorbed, and she's another teammate whose powers have been borrowed on more than one occasion. Now the first wasn't actually borrowed. They were in battle against one another and Rogue was still doing that whole villain thing. She would fight Storm and steal her powers. Guess that kind of stuck with Aurora, because the next time that Rogue would find herself borrowing the weather manipulator's abilities was when Storm had to offer her powers willingly to Rogue in Uncanny X-Men issue 185. But it wasn't for combat, and it wasn't used the way that Rogue used Bobby's powers. Instead, it was in order to give Rogue a new perspective, opening the young mutant up to trusting Storm and seeing the beauty that the Earth had to offer, versus Rogue's prior cynically inclined outlook. You brought them closer together. Moving on to number 4, reality warping. So Scarlet Witch is arguably one of the most powerful superheroes in the Marvel Universe, albeit being slightly unstable at times. Rogue has stolen her powers on a few occasions, but perhaps the most memorable one took place in Uncanny Avengers issue 2, volume 2. After absorbing Wanda's powers, Rogue had some trouble with it, the power being what she called a, I quote, confusing idiot power. She was unable to make use of the abilities right from the get-go, and she couldn't control it either. Nothing actually happens with these powers aside from her hands glowing. Why? Well, Wanda explains it as Rogue lacking the imagination to use her reality warping powers. Kinda savage, but does make sense. Up next at 3, physical trait absorption. We mentioned this ability in our intro, but we want to talk about the extent of this power of Rogue's, because often it's entirely involuntary. During the comic Fantastic Four vs. the X-Men issue 4, Rogue absorbs the Human Torch's powers. Now this doesn't only give her pyrokinesis, it gives her his fiery form that allows her to fly. While Rogue does make use of this for a brief period of time, she notes that this fire form completely obliterated her outfit, which was not fireproof. She could not control that. Sue Storm ends up using her powers to create a force field around Rogue, snuffing her out and leaving her completely naked. It's a bit of a distant shot of her naked though, so. Another time Rogue has absorbed a physical trait was when she absorbed Nightcrawler's powers on an alternate Earth. Earth 161. In this case, Rogue's powers did something a little unconventional. She ended up switching powers and appearance entirely with Kurt, which gave her blue skin and a tail, along with his abilities. This did not go over too well with Rogue. She kinda resented it. Up next, number 2, Rogue God of Thunder. Once upon a time, Rogue smushed her hand into Thor's face and stole his powers. I love the drawing in this panel. This was back in Rogue's more villainous early days, specifically in Avengers Annual Issue 10 when she faced off against Earth's mightiest heroes. Thor swoops Rogue off her feet, declaring he, I quote, knowest not who thou art. What follows is Rogue metaphorically slapping him, stating her name, and saying that he had her eternal gratitude for handing her victory on the proverbial silver platter, because she stole his powers and was about to whoop everyone. Oh, Thor. Sometimes his naivety is wonderfully endearing. And finally, in at number 1, she can recall past powers. In X-Men Volume 2, issue 107 from 2000, Rogue's powers mutated further. Not on their own though. This was due to an induced mutation by a telepathic mutant Skrull named Zakon. Now think of her as the Skrull equivalent of Charles Xavier. While it was not intentional, Zakon actually attempted to activate Rogue's powers to evade bounty hunters, the side effects allowed for Rogue to recall previously absorbed powers. And because of this, Rogue found herself having difficulty controlling which powers manifested when, occasionally boasting Wolverine's claws and Cyclops' optic blasts. This was temporary though. Alright, there we have it friends. What are your thoughts and feels about Rogue? Which of the powers that she's absorbed in the past have impressed you the most? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know your thoughts. If you guys dug this video, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Top 10 Nerd if you haven't already. We'd love it if you stuck around some more. In the meantime, thanks for watching friends. I'll catch you all in the next video.